So today I've been building some test benches, as you can see around here. There's one more that still has to be built. All 4 testing platforms in preparation for revamping all of our testing suite and methodology and standard operating procedures. I've been teasing it for a while. Steve and his team are actually coming out to my studio later this month. So in preparation for that, I've been playing around with like the PMD from like Elmore Labs, and I've got the PMD2 over here, which is very like squid-like, playing around with this sort of stuff. But it made me decide I want to do a video just about some of the neat features that exist on motherboards now that make things so much easier. So if you're shopping for a motherboard or whatever, little features that actually like improve your quality of life if you ever have to do anything with the motherboard. So let's just kind of take a tour of some neat features, not sponsored stuff, just things that made me go, this is pretty cool. The Q60 thick CPU cooler from Height features a hinged 5-inch ultra slim IPS 720 by 1280 display, a 60 Hz refresh rate, and 300 nit brightness, offering unique customization for your build. The Q60 also features Height's revolutionary digital hardware interface, Nexus Link, for sequential lighting and cooling control, with both thermal and positioning sensor data using a single cable, and supports up to 34 devices and 2 channels with Nexus Link amp scale. With the 53mm thick 240 radiator with 32mm thick FP12 fans, keep your CPU nice and cool for those long gaming sessions. To see the full list of features, specs, and supported CPU sockets, follow the sponsored link in the description below. So I know you all aren't used to positivity these days, but we're gonna try it today. Let's just see how this goes, right? I already expect it to not get any traction because no one cares about anything positive. Everyone just wants to see the world burn. Motherboards are interesting because if you think about what you're connecting to your board, right? Outside of the CPU socket itself, these are features that we're gonna talk about that exist on AMD and Intel boards alike. First and foremost, one of the first things, it's actually Asus that introduced it, M.2 hold downs. So things you connect to your motherboard, the CPU, your drives, your RAM, your GPU, and then obviously your connected devices like fans and RGB controllers and whatnot, right? M.2, as you can see, I'm having to use a tiny Phillips screwdriver to remove the heat sink that also doubles as the cover, and that one wasn't even, oh, that's right. This is one of the ones that like the screw itself is also the hold down for the drive, which is cool and all. The problem with that is like, as you saw, once I took it off, it like started to pull the drive out. And if you go to put it on, if you're not all centered and set up properly, you could actually pull the drive slightly out of its socket, which would then make it not show up. Yeah, I literally just did that right now. And then that moved a little bit. So I'm not a huge fan of these designs that, oh, damn it, I just folded the, I'll fix it in a second. I'm not a huge fan of these designs that have the screw itself that hold down the cover be the screw that also holds down the drive. So what you typically find these days now, this is a quick release right here for MSI. So you just push this button right here and then the whole thing pops off, boom. So it's got these two little latches that just sort of socket into right there, and then you click it down and it's installed. So that's already nicer because it's toolless. What's also toolless is the fact that you have these little latches right here. This was actually Asus. I think Asus came up with this first. I remember seeing it first on Asus boards and then it arrived later. I apologize to any other brand that may have done it first. I just recall seeing it on Asus boards first. So you can take your drive, you can latch it down, you know, without a tool necessary, and then you can take your little cover and put it back on there. Unfortunately, if you want to use the other ones, right, these are not toolless. We're getting better. We're progressing into the whole toolless and don't lose your screws nature. But as you can see here, it's got the same latches inside, so we can put 2 more M.2 drives, latch them down toollessly, and then use our tool to put the cover back on. Same thing for down here. We have 2 more drives that are available there. So if we move forward to the Mini-ITX board, when it comes to the drives and stuff, this one is actually quite a bit more advanced in my opinion. So we actually have several different spots to attach this guy here. So this is the Z890 board, obviously for like Core Ultra. We have, the cover's not on there because I put a Crucial T500 drive in here and utilized its own heatsink, but it has a quick release right here. Here's the other typical, like you would expect to see it in direct PCI lanes to the CPU for faster Gen 5 support. But as you can see, there's a little lever here. You push it up, it pops up. Got a thermal pad on each side, so if it's a double-sided drive, you can cool it, you would just pull this little rubber piece off. Actually, that rubber piece comes off with the plastic. But put the drive in there and then latch it down, just like before. Boom, toolless. But check it out. This is the first one we've seen in a long time that actually has the bottom piece is also fully toolless. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more spots for M.2 drives. So this is kind of a crazy board if you think about it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 NVMe drives, and they're actually all PCIe Gen 5. That's the crazy part about that. But the downside about this, you might notice some scratches right here along the edge of the cooler, well, I guess plate. Well, in shipping, it came loose on one side, just due to shock nature sometimes of how UPS and FedEx toss boxes. And then it was rubbing back and forth along the edge because it came like, I don't know how, it was like this in the box and it was moving around. Unfortunately, we have all these scratches on the edge. And this is not a cheap board, so that would actually be, it's actually quite upsetting. Little things too that exist that are really nice in motherboards these days are the RAM latches. So let's use this for an example. This board has latches on both sides for the RAM, which means if you go to take it out, you have to unlatch both ends. A lot of motherboards, like here's an example of actually an older board than this one, but doesn't. MSI or Asus was also one of the first to do single-sided latch. So as you can see, the RAM latch on here is stationary, it's fixed, it doesn't move. You only have a latch point on one side. So that actually makes it easier to get your RAM installed because you can just get the lip or the edge of the DIMM installed on that fixed side, give it a little push and you're good to go. So that was kind of nice because if you ever went to undo your RAM, especially if you had 4 DIMMs in, it was kind of a pain in the butt to get your finger in there to unlatch that. So it's kind of interesting though, on this Taichi X870E board, which is actually one of the most advanced boards we've seen yet, especially for AMD, it's kind of interesting to me that it has the double-sided latches. So it's kind of like they went backwards as far as I'm concerned. Almost every single top slot now is no longer a 16X slot because they want to get the drive closest to the CPU because it actually benefits the most from those direct PCIe lanes to the CPU because only drives these days can actually saturate the PCIe lane. GPUs still are not fully saturating the lane. So motherboards have started putting storage at the top. Unfortunately, if you start to have, say, these big heat sinks here, right, between your graphics card and your release button, which is actually, as you can see, is like almost, on this board is almost like subterranean of everything surrounding it. By the time you put your GPU in there, you can't get your finger in there to release the GPU, or even worse, you're starting to use like tools or screwdrivers or whatever to try and get in there and push the latch because they're literally flush. And that's not the only problem. Giant tower coolers also will like practically touch the GPU, making it, once you socket in the GPU, there's no getting it out. Like it's actually very difficult. I've seen people actually bust off on purpose this latch because it's just a toggle. It's just a toggle latch that does nothing but hook onto this hook right here to keep your GPU fully seated. Now, if you have a stationary GPU, especially a horizontally mounted motherboard like this, but if you have a stationary system and it's latched in there fully and screwed down and you're not moving it around like for LAN parties or whatever, you can get away with that. But if you're moving the PC at all, it can easily come unlatched. Definitely would never ship a GPU unlatched like that. It will rip itself out, no problem at all. But it's very, very easy to have that become obscured where you cannot release the GPU. So we've got these nice mechanisms now in place to be able to remove them. So Asus, again, I know I'm saying Asus a lot. Swear to God, they didn't sponsor this. I mean, you can hate the company, but you have to give them credit for things that they have sort of pioneered and really made popular. The push button releases. So this is a Crosshair Extreme $1,000 motherboard or whatever from Asus. But they had this, well, if they pioneered it or not, they were the first one I saw it on. This push button, which is nothing more than just, you can kind of see it in there maybe. It's just a steel cable attached to that latch that pulls it down for you, which is awesome. Because if you have a high like screen like this or a high heat sink for your M.2 and you've got your GPU there, look, you're never, ever getting that out. Let me stick the GPU on there. You would never get your finger in there. Not gonna happen. You know, it's fully covered. Like, it is latched in there. But as soon as you push that button, it's an awesome feature. So other brands have started implementing it. So we've got the, we've got this guy here. This is the new Taichi X870E. So it's actually just got a spring-loaded return. So it's just got this piece, like the little tooth right there that just slides over that little latch. And it's just a spring-loaded return. It's pretty neat. It's called the Easy Release. So you can see right there, it actually sticks up behind the graphics card, so we're latched in, but easy to remove it. This is MSI's latest version of it. This is on their Unify X I already showed you, which is their Z890 board. It's actually a toggle. So you can see right there, latched, unlatched. So it retains its last known position, if you will, which I think is interesting. I would kind of like it to latch the second it's in place and force me to unlatch it. That way I don't forget to latch it and then have it try and fall out for some reason. Let me show you what Asus has come up with on their Z890. If you pull it from the back, it won't release, but if you pull it from the front, I'm gonna break anything here, then it will. I don't like that. I like to know it's either latched or unlatched. So you don't have to take out the M.2, which is probably one of the biggest, beefiest, most over-engineered latching systems I've ever seen for an M.2 drive. I don't care for the fact that you can tilt it to have it let go, which is very odd. But another really neat feature that I wasn't even expecting until I started looking through the accessories on the Unify X board from MSI for building this test bench is, I was like, what on earth is this? It came with, and that's just antennas, it came with a motherboard remote control. Something I have not seen before. And on this remote control, you get the actual, like, well, I guess it's wired. It is wired to the board, but technically it's a remote control. It's a wired control, which shows you the Q code readout. So you can like diagnose if your board's not posting or whatever your current post status is. A plus and minus for something, probably some of the on-fly like turbo settings that they have. Power and reset button. And are you ready for this? OC retry, OC fail, and clear CMOS button. So you could literally like have this on your desk, I guess. Now this is awesome for something like, say, the test bench, because we're clearing CMOS and changing stuff around all the time. So this is actually kind of nice. Like I could have this just there, I guess, I don't know. It's just a neat feature to think of. Like, I like this because manufacturers are going, what can we do that hasn't really been done or what that's different-ish? So that was kind of neat. A little unfortunate that it's on Core 2 Ultra board because that's just sort of irrelevant. I mean, you already know that horse has buzzards and flies buzzing around it already, so would be awesome on an AMD board, but I don't have one of their AMD boards. Maybe it does exist. Maybe you guys can comment down below if this exists on their X870E boards, because that would be cool if it did. And I have to really think about the name, because unfortunately for motherboards now, once again, for a little bit there it was fine, because Intel was Z790 and AMD was X670, but now it's 890 with a Z and 870 with an X and an E, but sometimes an X without an E. Anyway, I just thought I'd show, like, there becomes a point where you start paying for extra features on boards that are more in a physical sense than just like how many M.2 slots does it have? How many, is it a 2 RAM slot or a 4 RAM slot? You'll find 2 RAM slots exist specifically on overclocking boards because 2 sticks of RAM will overclock better than, say, quad DIMM. But then you start dealing with like clear CMOS buttons. Does it have a physical Q code readout? Does it have physical buttons on it? Or is it for front side panel buttons only? But these are the things you start paying for that are extra. But I also forgot to show you how that quick release works on the Taichi board for this guy. So the quick release for the M.2, I showed this is really intuitive, right? You know how that goes. In fact, it's very squeaky though. But I was like, how do I get this sucker off? Pushing, 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 looks like a button, nothing's happening. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's a slide. So I thought that was kind of weird that it looks like a button you would push, but it's a slide. So I forgot to show that part. So anyway, time to get on out of here, but the tool list stuff, man, it's a lifesaver. And with these being test benches, the more tool list, the better. You might have noticed too, there's EK AIOs on here. These two have been in use already for quite a while. I added this one, that's why I still has plastic on it, because I have them laying around. Like, EK is all but out of business at this point. I ain't doing them any favors by using it on the test bench, but they're consistent and they're the same. One is not AIO, the others are, but we don't use the AIO or the RGB on them. One's RGB, or two RGB, one's not, whatever. So, whatever, trust me, it ain't doing them any favors to use it. It's just consistency. Might change them out in the future, but I need to keep everything the same and as consistent as possible. But what are your favorite motherboard features that exist on a physical sense? I think the quick release for the GPU is my favorite feature, especially as you put a big air cooler and M.2 cooler and stuff on there, you start scratching up your motherboard or your backplate because you're trying to put a fork in there to release it or something. For the longest time, I actually used the black long plastic spudger that came with the iFixit kits because it was plastic and wouldn't hurt anything. But even those started having a hard time getting down in there because they were fully covered, especially as backplates got thicker on motherboards too. Or not motherboards, but graphics cards. All right, there you go. Time to clean this mess back up and get on with testing a Schmafix card.